All right. Good afternoon again. My name is Kelly Williams. I'm the Director of Human Services at MAG, the Maricopa Association of Governments. Maricopa Association of Governments is the regional host and organizer of the Regional Domestic Violence Council. And our Domestic Violence Council this year has put together a work group specifically to address teen dating violence and to have further conversations and advocacy around this issue. We have been very lucky to have partnering organization, Bloom 365, that specializes in teen dating violence prevention, walk alongside us for this month and provide us with this great series of webinars. So today I am honored and thankful to introduce Donna Bartos, Harshita and Chance, who are all here from Bloom 365. And we welcome you all and thank you again for your participation. And we encourage you to put your questions in the chat, and this will be an interactive conversation. So thank you again for being here. We appreciate it. Donna?
Thank you, Kelly. Thank you all for joining us on this beautiful and sunny afternoon. We are so appreciative of the Maricopa County Association of Governments for hosting this webinar series on teen dating violence prevention, as February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, and we go orange to amplify awareness and to let young survivors know that we see them, we hear them, and we validate them. So a little bit about our organization. Before I get started, I'm just curious to know of those of you joining us tonight by a show of hands. And if you don't know how to raise your hand, you'll see that little menu bar probably at the bottom of your screen. There should be a little hand icon. If not, if you go all the way to the right and click on the three dots and then it says more, you should be able to see raise hand in there. If you could please raise your hand if you joined us for webinar number 1. If you were with us last week. Just curious to know how many repeats and returns we have. Fantastic. It looks like we have about 5 of you who are joining us again. Welcome back. Thank you so much for being here. So this might be a little redundant for those of you who are joining. For those of you who are new, just a little refresher and an overview on who we are as an organization. So Bloom 365 was started in 2006 with a big mission to prevent abuse before it starts. The types of abuses that we work to prevent are teen dating violence, domestic violence, sexual violence, gender-based violence, and any form of interpersonal violence that young people between the ages of 11 and 24 might see or witness, might experience themselves, or potentially might use violence or be those who are using abusive, violent, or controlling behaviors. Our big vision is safe and healthy relationships for all, and our goal is to truly uproot abuse in a generation. We have a big goal to be out of business by 2030. Don't know if it'll happen, but that is our big, hairy, audacious goal. And what we want to do is make sure that we are educating and activating 10% of Gen Z youth across the country and across our state of Arizona by the year 2030, so that we can go on and do other things as adults in their lives, as trusted adults in their lives. Our name at Bloom 365 is our promise. Bloom 365 is an acronym, and it stands for Bring Love on Others More, 365 days a year. We won't have a quiz afterwards, but hopefully you will remember one thing about us, and that is our name and what it stands for. And we believe that everybody has the capacity and the potential to show a little bit more love every day to those around us. We have a fantastic team of staff and lead peer advocate student interns who will be joining us throughout this series. And tonight I'm excited to introduce you to 2 of our team members, Chance and Harshita. Before we get started, I'll just give you a quick introduction of who I am, and then they will take a few minutes to share a little bit about them so that you know who you are going to be chatting with and listening to throughout these next potentially 90 minutes that we'll be together. So again, my name is Donna Bartos. I started Bloom 365 in 2006 because I wish that something like this existed when I was a teen. I experienced teen dating violence, witnessed domestic violence at home, and was sexually assaulted as a child. These are big traumas that I experienced early on in my life, and wish that I had education in my school, resources such as counseling and advocacy specific for teens. And most importantly, I wish that those who harmed me had access to interventions and resources too. They did not exist, and they didn't even exist in 2006. So this organization got started as a way to prevent and respond to these issues as they happen to young people. Everything that we do at our organization is based in research. We follow the promising practice theories, and we do lots of work in schools and communities to get to that big goal of uprooting abuse in a generation. So Harshita, I'm going to hand it off to you if you want to do some introducing and why you're here, and then Chance, if you wouldn't mind following.
Hi, I'm Harshita. I'm an LPA, which is a lead peer advocate, and I'm a high schooler, and I basically I started a club at school and kind of promote Bloom 365's values and have campaigns for teen dating violence awareness, domestic violence awareness, and sexual assault awareness. So we just bring this mission into schools and kind of promote that awareness and create like a culture of inclusivity.
Hello, everyone. My name is Chance. I'm the program manager with Intervention Services. I've been with Bloom just a little bit over a year, as of I think 2 weeks ago. Bloom 365 is this absolutely fantastic organization that I can't get enough of. It's really great what we're doing out there. I love it. I'm providing counseling services, intervention services for those individuals that have been identified as at risk for using violence in their interpersonal relationships. They're currently using that violence in their interpersonal relationships, or even better, they're at promise for change, because I really believe that these individuals that are experiencing these things and showing up this way in their relationships have that ability to overcome this and just be stronger, better, healthier individuals out there in the community. Also deliver those 7 doses and a little bit of everything else.
Awesome. Thank you, Chance. And for those of you who aren't familiar with us, our 7 doses is our core foundational prevention, education, and healthy relationship curriculum that we have available for schools, community organizations. You're going to be experiencing a little bit of these doses in tonight's webinar, but if that's something that you're interested in learning about later on, please be sure to reach out to us after this webinar and we can get you all that information. All right, so webinar number 2, why does teen dating violence happen? During our time together, we are going to tackle and talk about the root causes. This is going to be a very interactive webinar. So we will hopefully be breaking out into some groups. If you're not comfortable with that, we can figure out an alternative for you, maybe to do some chatting, but there will be some group work with tonight's webinar to really focus on having the community conversations that we need. Oh, Kelly, do you want to share something?
Unfortunately, our IT is having a bit of an issue with the breakout sessions. So as of right now, unfortunately, it does not look like, for some reason, because this is a webinar and not a regular Zoom meeting, they're having a hard time with the breakouts. I apologize for that.
That's okay. We will make do. We'll activate the chat as best as we can.
Thank you.
Sure, no problem. So we're going to tackle again those root causes: unhealthy and rigid gender norms, social acceptance, taught abusive behavior, common threads. We're really going to be looking at what those root causes are, how they might be showing up in the lives of young people. And Harshita is here with us to be able to share what she's witnessed and seen and what's most relevant to teens today as it relates to these root causes. Just a quick alert, there will be sensitive content that we are sharing. We are talking about teen dating violence, prevention, and response. So some of the information that we will be discussing and exploring might feel uncomfortable, but we don't sugarcoat the facts because we know that they're important for learning. So if this content is too difficult for you, we encourage you to take care of yourself and your well-being. If you need to turn your camera off, or if you need to pop out for a bit, or just pause, this webinar will be recorded and you will be able to come back to it later on. So at Bloom 365, we do what we call is addressing the elephant in the room. So the elephant in the room is a problem, topic, or situation that exists and no one wants to discuss because it is uncomfortable. You have an opportunity to utilize our elephant in the room system. If there's anything that we shared and you want to comment on, but you don't feel comfortable using the chat to do so, you have this option. You'll see a QR code in the right corner of your screen. If you have a mobile device and you are able to, go ahead and take a photo of that, and that will take you to a link to an elephant in the room confidential form. If you want to just keep this handy for any questions that might pop up, again, that you are uncomfortable sharing in the chat. If we say anything or share anything with you that you completely disagree with and you feel uncomfortable sharing that in the chat, you can use that QR code, and any comments that you want to share with us, feel free to use it. At the end of this webinar, we will be able to pop a link into the chat if you're unable to access it through that QR code. Okay, so let's get started. Root causes. By definition, a root cause is a factor or factors that lead to a problem. In this case, when we talk about teen dating violence, the abuse of power through tactics of control. In our first webinar, we made the clear distinction between power and control and anger. Teen dating violence is not stemmed in anger. Teen dating violence and other forms of interpersonal violence, like domestic violence and sexual assault, are stemmed in power and control. An individual or group of individuals using their power to control someone else through tactics of abuse, such as verbal abuse, emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, financial control, coercion, etc. So the root causes are the reasons these issues persist. At Bloom 365, we use this very colorful image called our blooming versus wilting education tool. So we are going to focus specifically on the roots. You'll see on the right side of that wilting flower, the center of that wilting flower represents the signs, symptoms, red flags, warning signs, characteristics, types of abuse and violence that stem from power and control, but come from these ongoing individual, relationship, community, societal, and systemic root causes, which include social acceptance, silence in the face of violence, seeing teen dating violence and not saying something about it, or normalizing it like it is just an inevitable part of growing up. Choice, the choice to make someone wilt or to help them bloom, the choice to be harmful or helpful, the choice to be controlling or caring. Taught abusive behavior, this is where young people and adults are witnessing and seeing these issues play out and be taught as normal, as okay, as something that we don't challenge. Exposure to violence as a child. This is where some adverse childhood experiences come in, which we will talk about in our next webinar regarding risk factors. Insecurity, really this deeply rooted insecurity where young people are feeling powerless, feeling unheard, feeling not validated, feeling unworthy. And that can lead to using power and control to, again, gain confidence or gain control of a situation that they feel they have no control over. And unhealthy gender norms, one that Chance is going to lead us through an activity in to really dissect and dive into how do rigid gender norms play a role in this power and control thing that leads to teen dating violence. And then you'll see on the left side, our blooming flower. We will have a webinar that focuses on a lot of the components of that blooming flower. But today we're going to focus on the roots of the wilting flower. The ones that we're going to uncover a little bit more in depth are, again, social acceptance, insecurity, and unhealthy gender norms. So social acceptance. Use your chat function, please, to share out where you think teen dating violence is normalized when it comes to friends and family. How can friends and family normalize teen dating violence? And what I mean by that is just view it as something that we shouldn't be concerned with, something that is not a very big issue. Where do you see, or how do you think that this shows up with friends and family as it relates to teen dating violence? Go ahead and use your chat and share some of your insights here, and I will read them off as they come through. Any ideas? Saying the person is immature. How else? Excusing the behavior, yes. It's not that serious, right? Minimizing it. Traditional households. Harshita, do you want to jump in here and share from your perspective? I see another one. They will come around as they mature. Yep. Victim blaming. If a parent was abused by the other parent when they were young, then married and still experienced violence in their marriage. Yes. Harshita, go ahead and jump in here and see how you've seen friends or family normalize or socially accept teen dating violence.
Yeah, I've definitely seen the like, especially between teenage relationships, it's very normal for like most friends to just be like, oh yeah, that they're just like that. That's just something that happens. it's not a big deal. You should get over it. A lot of that kind of stuff is very perpetuated in especially teenagers who don't know, especially like what's exactly right and wrong, and they're just going by what they're hear. And a lot of the parents around them or their adults around them are speaking that same kind of way, and they kind of have that internalized.
Yes, thank you for that perspective. We also have making light of it, like it's just a joke. He's the popular guy at school. And then someone wrote ACEs, or there's adverse childhood experiences. And someone in the chat said victim blaming. So you were absolutely right when you say that. And this is where we see the social acceptance among family and friends of teen dating violence and all forms of interpersonal violence the most pervasive and sometimes the hardest to root out. And this is where we see victim blaming coming in with statements or just how people respond. By saying you need to stand up for yourself, that is, again, blaming the person for taking it and not being strong enough to end the teen dating violence or abuse that they're experiencing. Other victim blaming statements include, how could you let them treat you that way? Again, blaming the young person for experiencing teen dating violence, for being the target of abuse. What did you do to make them so angry? Why haven't you broken up with them yet? I warned you. That's a big one. And that's one that friends and family and parents especially have told teens who've experienced victimization in their dating relationships. You know, I told you you shouldn't date people like that. Why didn't you just fight back? So these are some common ways that even friends and families normalize teen dating violence through victim blaming. And we also have in here, misinterpret controlling for caring. Yes, exactly. Oh, they're jealous. They love you. And that's so cute. They're just following you to work because they love you so much. So we see that happen and hear that happen through the way people comment or respond to teen dating violence often. So when we think about social acceptance in the community, really you see this visual of a school of fish with one fish looking the other way, essentially turning the other cheek and just keep floating the other way, ignoring the problem. How do you see community responding to teen dating violence? Do you see community responding at all? Go ahead and put in the chat, how does community, out in the community, root in this social acceptance of teen dating violence? What are your thoughts on that? Not my kid, not my problem. Yep. So I'll throw a question out there to all of you while you're thinking and what you're going to put in the chat. February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. How many of you have gone to a supermarket or a drugstore, Walgreens, CVS, Fry's, Safeway, etc., and have seen the big orange display with products to raise awareness and raise funds for teen dating violence awareness causes? Anybody see anything like that out there? Never, never, never. No, no, no. Why not? How do we get the community to accept that this is a problem worthy of amplifying, a problem worthy of engaging all community members, whether you're grocery shopping or you're going to the library or you're going to church or whatever you're doing, going to school, to engage everyone in this cause? Harshitha, what do you think? Where are you seeing as a teen the social acceptance of teen dating violence at the community level, whether it's schools, community organizations, on Main Street, wherever it is?
Yeah, it's definitely really rare to see people actually know that February is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month, even though it's such a prevalent issue. And also it's like a lot of the time people are thinking, well, that's not as big of a deal as other things, or that those kids must have done something, or it just doesn't happen here. And that's just untrue. And it's something that needs to be broken.
Absolutely. How has your school gotten involved? I know we haven't delivered our 7-dose high school or middle or a 5-dose middle school curriculum at your school, but how has your school supported you in these efforts to be part of building that community?
I've received support from my school for what we're doing. It isn't the biggest, they're always accepting of what we're doing. There aren't like no restrictions or anything like that. Like, but they definitely aren't like taking that active step into like doing it themselves. It's more, yeah, you can do your thing. I would like to see them kind of take that step forward and like do it themselves, talk about the principal or someone talk about it that way instead of just having us do our own thing. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's okay for you to have a club, but you haven't seen your high school really get engaged in building that community support. Thank you for that. So some other comments in the chat: should be part of high school curriculum. We agree 100%. They may think it will not happen to them or their family members. Yes. So folks out in the community just don't think that this is a problem that affects them. So why get involved? And then communities don't see this as a pervasive problem, especially not enough to put money toward it or have programs available. Absolutely correct. And then a question: are there resources for parents so they can look out for the signs? Yes, we will be sharing lots of our resources. At the end of this webinar, you will have access to a link with a toolkit for lots of information regarding the signs. And I highly encourage you, if you are interested in really getting deeper into this conversation on how are we going to prevent this, please join us for our next webinar, which is Thursday, where we're going to focus on those risk factors. Specifically, how do you know if your teen or the teens in your life are at risk for using violence, are at risk for perpetrating teen dating violence, because that's where we see the biggest solutions here for prevention. In addition to providing support to those who are harmed and those who are victimized, we also need to focus on providing support so we can prevent the continuation of these behaviors early on. That's the work that Chance does with our organization. Okay, so social acceptance in the media. If you want to go ahead and use the chat, where have you or where do you think teens are seeing teen dating violence or abusive and violence relationships being normalized in the media? What types of media and how do you think it's showing up? So we've got social media, TikTok, music videos, music, online, songs, movies, songs, comics, games, television, music and TV, celeb couples, absolutely. Harshita, do you want to jump in here and add anything?
Yeah, I definitely agree with all of those, especially a lot on social media like TikTok, and kind of platforms where anybody can have a voice. Those are ones that there's especially a lot of normalization of violence and interpersonal violence in general, and especially teen dating violence, as teens are they're the youngest, they're the most vulnerable to outside pressure. I also definitely see it in the way that just like the media responds to instances of teen dating violence. It's more as like, it's like a one-off, or it's something that isn't as important, is how I see it.
Yes, thank you for that. And we have some more comments in the chat. You know, what about, Harshita, have you seen any things like picking up that have been trending that could lead to either teen dating violence or peer-on-peer violence? For example, I think a while back, there was something called, and excuse my language here, Slap Ass Fridays, where students were encouraged to go around and smack. It was primarily the boys smacking the butts of the girls, but we know that all students were doing it. Were there any other things like that that trended, that normalized and made a joke of, you know, any kind of controlling, abusive, violent, or inappropriate behaviors?
The one that immediately comes to mind is where a lot of girls feel like when usually their boyfriends are very controlling or asks for where they are at all times, where that's seen as them being loving or protective, and kind of that's been like listed as a reason why they're in like a very like happy relationship, and that's why their boyfriend loves them. I've seen that. I've also seen a lot of like, I don't know if this is a new thing, but people like pulling each other's pants down. I've seen that at my school, and just randomly going up to people and doing that. So that's definitely something I've seen.
Yeah, this might be old school at this point, but I remember when we got started with this program back in 2011 and 2012, there was something called cuffing season. Is that something that's still relevant today in high school?
So there's actually a song that recently came out, a SZA song, which has that phrase in it. I'm not quite sure what it means, but like I know that that song has that phrase in it, so that might be another way that that's kind of coming back.
Yeah, so it was like this cuffing season. If you're not cuffed during the winter formal season or the spring dance season or prom season, then something's up. So you better get cuffed to someone, and, you know, thinking about the terminology, even on these things that are trending. We've got a couple more things in the chat here. We have commenting on others' pics and videos, Discord, Facebook video games, Women Out Wednesdays. Haven't heard anything about that. I'm curious to know a little bit more if you feel free to share that in the chat. And then still see reports of male cup checks. Wow. Oh, it's whip them out, not women out. Okay. So lots of ways that these type of behaviors are normalized, and also when they're normalized like this in the media and social media, we definitely see them relayed and transferred into teen relationships. So we're going to do a little challenge here. For those of you who are utilizing the chat, thank you for your participation. We're going to do an activity called Change the Headline. And what I'd like you to do when I read the headline, I want you to try to change it to where it is not victim blaming and not minimizing the abuse or violence that happened. And then I challenge you after today's webinar, when you're watching the news or reading something online, or if you still get the paper, reading the headlines, sadly, there will be teen dating violence, murders and murder-suicides this year and in future years, until we can get to the point where we have reached an entire generation, or domestic violence related incidents. So I challenge you, when these incidents happen and when they are publicized and reported in the media, to check out the headline and see if those who are reporting the media are starting to report it with a way that is not blaming the victim. Okay, so here is the first headline. So go ahead in the chat, and how would you change this headline so that it is not as victim blaming? Alleged victim was assaulted after inviting a person they just met over to their place. How would you change this normalizing and really not holding the person who caused the harm accountable, but blaming the victim for the abuse? Do you see how this headline blames the victim? So I'll read it again. Alleged victim was assaulted after inviting a person they just met over to their place, which someone could take, well, if they didn't invite a person they just met over to their place, then they wouldn't have been assaulted. How would you change this headline if you were reporting? So someone said remove just met. Let's see what that sounds like. Alleged victim was assaulted after inviting a person over to their place. Would that change it fully? And then someone else says visitor assaults friend at their home. Yes, yes. Remove alleged, yes. So if we move alleged victim and we say visitor assaults friend at their home, we are getting closer to removing that victim blaming language. So it's really important that if you have teens in your life and these conversations come up, or if they've heard about an incident, something that unfortunately might be trending on TikTok, that is a quote unquote headline, to have these constructive conversations with them and work together on changing the headline. It's something we do with our kids, and I've done it with my now young adult children since they were young teens. And it has helped them understand how we need to shift our perspectives and change the narrative so that we can truly get to a place where we're no longer victim blaming at that societal level. And someone else shared invited guests assault host. Yes, putting the responsibility where it belongs, on the shoulders of the person who's doing the harm, and not on the shoulders of those people or individuals who are experiencing it. Assailant assaults victim in their home. Yep, there you go. You've got it. Let's do the next one. Sexual assault victim has consumed too much alcohol to fight back against their attacker. How would you change this headline? Sexual assault victim had consumed too much alcohol to fight back against their attacker. Attacker assaults vulnerable person. Good. Any other thoughts? I think attacker sexually assaults victim sums it up beautifully. Do you all agree? Yeah, we need to make sure that the headline is the attacker, not the victim. Absolutely. Attacker sexually assaults victim. Yep, that's another one. Okay, and one more. Oh, let me go back here. Sorry about that. I missed one, I think. Oh, nope, there were only two. We're good. Okay, so now we're going to jump into another way that we see one of the most prevalent characteristics of teen dating violence, jealousy, normalized in the media or socially accepted in the media. So by a show of hands, how many of you here have ever become jealous? Anyone ever been jealous before? Yes. So jealousy is that natural emotion that probably chances are many of us have experienced. It can show up in lighthearted and funny ways, but sometimes it can show up where it becomes concerning in a teen relationship. So you'll see it highlighted here. The most common root cause of jealousy, it's pretty obvious, is insecurity. So feeling that deep insecurity, which can lead to that jealousy, which can lead to potentially possessive jealousy that can be harmful. So jealousy defined is, again, this perfectly healthy yet complicated emotion that triggers thoughts, feelings, behaviors, and can even be triggered by our environment. So potentially, in teen relationships, seeing this, and I'll throw out an example, maybe Harshita, you have some other ones, where there are two teens dating and one of those teens likes another teen's Instagram post or TikTok. And then that, oh, what do you like them? Are you talking to them now? Are you cheating on me? How else have you seen this show up, Harshita?
Yeah, that's definitely, social media is a very big way where it shows up. There's just sometimes talking to someone else, wearing certain things, just a lot of these like very small things that people think, but is actually causes that insecurity and can lead to jealousy.
Yes. And so Harshita, when do you think jealousy crosses the line to possessiveness?
Once it gets to that point where instead of just feeling that feeling, you act on it, and then you cause harm or just act on it is what I'm thinking, or restrict in some way, like Erica said.
Yeah, so we have a chat, restricting people's choices. Absolutely. So the belief that you have the right to know where your partner is or who they're talking to, maybe following them or looking through their phone. So that's the way possessive jealousy often shows up in teen relationships and in adult relationships, let's be honest. Believing that they have the right to control what their partner wears, especially if they're uncomfortable, if their partner receives attention when they wear certain clothing. The belief that one partner has the right to know or right to control who another partner is friends with or who hangs out with. And then believing that, that one partner's needs come first, in a relationship, meaning, getting jealous when your dating partner spends time with their family, and insisting that that dating partner only spends time with them. So we see this show up in many different ways in teen relationships. We also, some of you mentioned music earlier, we also see it show up in lyrics. So we were going to do a little breakout activity here, but instead what we're going to do is dissect a few song lyrics. So I just need a moment to share a different screen here. I'm going to show some common song lyrics. And Chance, when I show them, would you mind reading them? And then as Chance is reading the lyrics, go ahead and put in the chat where you might see some jealousy showing up, or what are some red flags that you might see jealousy, and potentially what kind of jealousy in these very popular and common song lyrics. Chance, are you ready to roll?
I am ready.
All right, here we go. Make sure you can see that.
Oh, it's a little, there we go. All right. So the song is Every Breath You Take by The Police. So lyrics are, every breath you take and every move you make, every bond you break, every step you take, I'll be watching you. Every single day and every word you say, every game you play, every night you stay, I'll be watching you. Oh, can't you see you belong to me? How my poor heart aches with every step you take, every move you make, and every vow you break, every smile you fake, every claim you stake, I'll be watching you. Every night you stay, I'll be watching you. I'm gonna be honest, that it kind of creeped me out a little bit to read that.
All right, so what kind of possessive jealousy are you seeing here? So I'll be watching you, stalking, you belong to me, possessiveness. Yeah, I'll be watching you. I'll be watching you. Now, how many of you ever jammed out to this song? Raise your hand, be honest, if you ever have. I know I have. Love it. Love the lyrics, love the beat. It's so catchy. But do we ever really absorb what the song is saying? No, because this stuff is just normalized. And maybe this would feel creepy if someone was doing this to us and it was not just on the page of song lyrics, but this is just one example of the social acceptance of these types of essentially violence. All right, here we go. Chance, the next one.
All right, so the song is When I Was Your Man by Bruno Mars. Same bed, but it feels just a little bit bigger now. Our song on the radio, but it don't sound the same. When your friends talk about you, all it does is just tear me down, because my heart breaks a little when I hear your name. It all just sounds like ooh, 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 who. Too young, too dumb to realize that I should have brought you flowers and held your hand. Should have gave you all my hours when I had the chance. Take you to every party because all you wanted to do is dance. Now my baby's dancing, but she's dancing with another man. My pride, my ego, my needs, and my selfish ways caused a good, strong woman like you to walk out of my life. Now I never get to clean up the mess I made. Oh, and that haunts me every time I close my eyes. It all just sounds like ooh, 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 who? Too young, too dumb to realize that I should have bought you flowers, and held your hand. Should have gave you all my hours when I had the chance. Take you to every party because all you wanted to do was dance.
Good job, Chance.
Ooh, 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 who?
Ooh, ooh, ooh. All right, my poor heartaches. I always thought that song was about a guardian angel watching over a loved one, huh? Blaming someone for unrequited love. So any other songs that you can think of where you know for sure that jealousy or possessive jealousy has been normalized? Anyone else have any songs to share?
I'll share every Taylor Swift song.
Oh, how about the one, oh, it's a country song where she beats the car with a bat. Oh, what is that one? Oh my gosh, who is it? I'm blanking. Anyone know what song I'm thinking of?
I think that's the next time you cheat.
Yeah. Something, Carrie Underwood. That's it. Yep. All right, so we have some more comments here. We've got, there's too many names in the Latino genre. I know you want to leave me, but I refuse to let you go. Yep, Carrie Underwood before he cheats. That's the one. So we see this stuff normalized everywhere, whether it's families and friends and how family and friends are responding to teen dating violence when it shows up with victim blaming language. We see this or don't see this in community. You know, community silence essentially is social acceptance that these type of issues aren't important enough, aren't a priority, or maybe are just an inevitable part of growing up. And then again in media. And I see here we've got another one, Rihanna and Eminem song, Love the Way You Lie. Yeah, that's a big one. And that one has a great beat too. All right. So what do you do as a parent or as an adult in the life of a young person who might be struggling with coping with jealousy? Well, one thing that you can do is help them identify the root cause. Having conversations with our teens, especially our teen children, if you have teen kids, or if you're a mentor or a coach or a teacher who works with teens, really have that conversation with them to help them identify the root cause of their jealousy. Do they need validation? Do they feel like they're not getting validated enough in that relationship? Are they worried about the future of their relationship? Are they worried that maybe their partner is going to break up with them or find someone better? Is there a past experience resurfacing? Potentially, maybe a past relationship wasn't so good and maybe someone was not respectful or potentially cheated on them. Is that coming back up? Or are they afraid of missing out? If their partner is hanging out with their friends, do they have that, again, fear of missing out, which is leading to the root cause of their jealousy? Another way to have a conversation with them and to encourage them is to be authentic. It's really tough for adults and for teens to admit when we're going through something that's challenging, to admit that we're wrong, or to admit maybe that we're jealous. So encouraging your teen or your young person to talk about why they're feeling jealous and share that with their partner. In one of our upcoming webinars, we're going to give you some tips and tools on how to coach teens in your life on how to use good communication strategies where they could communicate if jealousy is popping up for them. So hopefully you will be able to join us for that one. And again, this is using those I statements, which is what we're going to go deeper into in another webinar, but really focusing on helping your teen use, you know, we tell our little kids, use your words, but how do we encourage the teens in our life to use their words in a way where they are expressing their feelings versus becoming possessively jealous through those unhealthy behaviors? So I feel left out when you're always spending time with your friends. Could we maybe spend some more time together? So not asking the partner not to spend time with their friends, but maybe ask to spend some more time together. Okay, this brings us to the elephant in the room, the big root of unhealthy and rigid gender roles, where we see teen dating violence and other forms of interpersonal violence normalized based on unhealthy and rigid gender roles. Essentially, when you're out of the box of the rigid gender roles, sometimes there might be a situation where you become vulnerable. So Chance, this is for you to take away, and Chance is going to lead you in a discussion in the chat regarding these gender stereotypes.
All right, so yeah, let's talk about this uncomfortable topic of gender stereotypes. So these stereotypes are those generalizations about behaviors, personality, preferences, appearances, abilities, characteristics, and roles that we play in our relationships or within society. So in that chat box, can anyone think of a stereotype that's related to a gender? And as you type them in, I will read them out. Yeah, women are emotional. Absolutely. Men don't cry. The mailbox, strong, not emotional, protector. Absolutely. What would be a construction worker stereotype? Absolutely. Yep. Women are dramatic. The pretty privilege. Okay. All fantastic examples. And then we might also have that construction worker stereotype, right? That's a man that's a construction worker out there working hard, big and strong, no emotions, or a military personnel stereotype. The majority of that stereotype would be also the same thing, you know, that strength right there. A male, you know, maybe a little unhinged. So in addition to the stereotypes, gender roles are influenced by societal norms. So a norm is an unwritten or dominant rule of behavior that is acceptable in a group or society. And that norm just means it's normative, or it's something that's common. But it's important to note that just because something is normal doesn't always mean that it's inherently good. An example of that would be in the 1950s. It was very normal, very common to smoke cigarettes. Not exactly the best idea. So exceptions are traits or characteristics that are uncommon and don't follow those societal norm rules. It's also important to recognize that these exceptions aren't inherently bad. So in the chat, is this a norm or is it an exception? Exception now. I'll ask the question a little differently. Does anyone think that this is a common, normal thing today? Anyone out there wants to challenge the status quo and let us know that you still have one of these in your house?
And for those of you who are not on the screen, we have a photo of a rotary phone on the screen.
Yes, the rotary phone. Right, absolutely. So they're all exceptions, right? These went out of style in the 80s, maybe the early 90s. So if you have this, it would definitely be an exception. Maybe they're making a comeback today. So what about this one here? Is this a norm or exception? Norm, yeah.
So this is a smartphone on the screen.
Yeah, smartphone on the screen.
And you know, we changed the photo of this. We used to have a smartphone with a home button on it. And some of the students said, that's the exception. We don't have home buttons anymore on our phones.
Yes, that is true. Yes, definitely normal. You know, pretty much everyone has this has a cell phone, you know, sitting in their pocket or next to them, even now on this webinar. So our breakout group is just going to be that open, honest conversation in the chat, which works for me. I'm used to doing that in a big open room, you know, with 40 plus people. So fantastic. So we have those feminine, masculine stereotypes, right? So these are those stereotypes that are traditionally associated with either girls and women or boys and men. So this is our gender norm activity. So before we start this activity, I'm going to start putting things in the chat. I'm just going to give you a brief, excuse me, explanation of the activity. So feminine norms are those societal expectations or stereotypes that are associated with girls and women, whereas masculine norms are societal expectations or stereotypes that are associated with boys and men. So exceptions are just the opposite of the norm, or they challenge these stereotypes. So since we're not going to enter breakout groups, we'll skip that. So we're looking for things that would be like behaviors, right? So violent versus peaceful. A personality trait might be emotional versus closed off. appearance. Then we have abilities, weak versus tough. And then some characteristics of those feminine norms and masculine norms. And then maybe some roles in relationships or societies. One example that we use is that body count fame versus shaming individuals. Or we could just say, individuals that work in construction are males, and individuals that work in a helping profession, such as the one that I'm in, would be primarily female.
Or feminine.
Or feminine, yes.
So Chance, I put in the chat there just the prompt for feminine norms, if everyone wants to start populating some feminine norms in the chat.
Yes, thank you. So we have need protection, passive, overly emotional. What else would be a feminine norm? Loving, long hair. Absolutely. What about some exceptions? What about some exceptions to these feminine norms or stereotypes? Shoppers, a norm. Emotionally stable. Imposing. Self-sufficient, yeah. Intimidating. Independent. Strong mentally and physically. Avoidant attachment. Level-headed. These are all fantastic exceptions and norms. Well done. So now let's switch gears and move over to the masculine norms. Simple, provider. Assertive, protector. One-track mind, natural leader, self-sufficient. These are definitely some masculine norms that we're going to see out in society today, especially in our Western societies, right? What about some masculine exceptions? Thoughtful, sensitive, caring, emotional, loving, kind. So as just one additional question to our activity, do you think that it's possible to have both of these, the norms and the exceptions? Is that acceptable? Is that possible to do? I would agree. Yeah, I would think it's absolutely possible to be both, right? We can be tough and we can be sensitive at the same time, right? We can be caring and nurturing, but we can also be a leader and a provider. So often that might be looked down upon, right? So with that conversation in mind, can we open up a poll for this, or we're just going to go ahead and drop it in the chat?
Go ahead and drop it in the chat.
Drop it in the chat. So based on your conversation,
I don't think we can do a poll. Yeah, we can't do a poll. Go ahead.
Okay. So based on that conversation, which of these feminine traits are most normalized in society? Attractive, sensitive, caregiver, sensitive. Yeah. So attractive, sensitive, and caregiver. So typically when we do this in schools or with our TAA, this is typically what we're seeing here. It's fairly rare that we see any of the other ones that aren't being shared. Oh, except for one. All right, which I love that somebody got one in there. So the majority, it looks like it says attractive, caregiver, sensitive, with one out there for strength, power, and athletic. So with that being said, based on the conversation we just had, which of these masculine traits is most normalized in society? So we have A and C, which is that strength and power, athletic, strength and power, strength and power, strength and power. A and C, strength and power, athletic. I feel like I sound like a broken record right now. Strength and power, athletic, right? It's like a skipping CD. Yes, absolutely, right? So we're seeing that. I mean, so there's a clear difference in those traits that are most normalized in society. We see our masculine traits, what we look for is that strength, power, and athleticism, whereas our feminine traits, we're looking for attractive, caregiver, sensitive. So that's why this is our elephant in the room conversation, because we had to have these conversations to realize these things as a society. So let's address that other uncomfortable elephant in the room. I close this chat out. Here we go. So research on teen dating violence and domestic violence homicides indicates that over 90% of teen dating violence murder victims are female, and 85% of the people who commit domestic violence related murders are men. So while men and boys do experience dating abuse, domestic violence, and sexual assault, the outcomes are not typically lethal.
And so why do you all think that is? How do you think those rigid gender norms play into this? Or do you think they don't play into it at all?
Let me get back here in the chat, see what we have. So the question again was, how do we think that the rigid gender norms that we just discussed play into this? I think rigid gender norms support men getting what they want by force. Yeah. Any other thoughts? I think women see themselves as victims too. Males are taught aggressive behaviors, plays into the norm for genders, athletic, strength, power. The norms restrict males from addressing the feels, yeah. Then they overreact, right? Because they're just burying everything deep down inside and then blow up. So this chat keeps getting in the way of me looking at this. So during webinar 3, we're going to talk about the common risk factors that lead to this particular statistic. And what the statistic is, if you can't see it, it says 98% of mass shooters in the US are male. %98 of mass shooters.
Chance, I just want to address a couple comments here that just came through. So one is men, boys want to show strength, power, and some do not have the education or ways to show it without using violence. And then another one, I'm wondering if the 15% of the women who commit domestic violence related murders cover self-defense and not an abuser. Yes, it does actually. So, many of the women who do lethally harm their partners are doing it in self-defense, and some are not. But we also need to look at kind of those norms and those stereotypes and start to uncover a bit more when it comes to gender violence and when it comes to the role that gender has to play. There has not been a lot of research as it relates to teen dating violence of yet with feminine perpetrators of teen dating violence. We do know that teen girls or feminine teens or more feminine identified teens do and can perpetrate these harms, but typically they're not lethal. They are not, again, physically violent, and that may come down to biology, but it also comes down to these norms of force and power and control. So great comment there and observation from one of our attendees.
I actually wanted to add to that. So the one that says they, so men and boys want to show strength and power, and some don't have the education or ways to show it without using violence. And that's an emotional intelligence, like growing up, understanding like this is the emotion that is brewing inside of me. And it starts to compound over time. And then that just blows up because you don't know what to do with it. And then we look at it as a form of anger. So we have that emotional intelligence. We understand what's causing that emotion. What's the environment? How is this showing up in my life? What's happening around me? And if they can understand that, they can understand the emotion and then how to properly show that to those individuals rather than using violence.
Yeah, and to add to that, when it comes to violence and violence against women and girls specifically, there is a thread here of choice, of making that intentional choice to do harm to someone who maybe is undervalued or undervalued because of their gender. We see higher rates of victimization among women and girls. We also see higher rates of victimization among LGBTQ plus young people as it relates to teen dating violence. But we also know that masculine teens and teen boys don't typically reach out for help. Teens don't typically reach out for help in general. Only about 9% do, but even more so, masculine teens and teen boys have bigger barriers at play with seeking help. And with one of the attendees shared about, how can, young people address their feelings and it be safe to do so based upon their masculinity. So there are a lot of things at play here. So there isn't just one root cause. As you'll see, there are many that lead to these statistics, but these rigid gender norms really we're seeing distinctly in the facts that we need to do more to engage boys and men, not only in these conversations, but in the work of prevention.
Absolutely. Before I get into this here, we have the women are encouraged to be self-aware. I don't know if men are. So I asked the group, what do we think? Do we think that men are encouraged to be self-aware? No. No, I don't think so. No. And that might be something that ties back to those rigid or unhealthy gender norms. Bury your feelings, right? Move forward, be a leader. Kind of that suck it up, buttercup mantra, right? It's absolutely not about feelings. So can't see this slide here. So 72% of murder suicides involve an intimate partner. The most common type of perpetrator in DV, or domestic violence murder suicide cases, is a possessively jealous male. Possessive jealousy, substance use, and access to a firearm are all present in about 40% of the domestic violence homicides committed by men. So with that, here's a video of some of the young men and masculine individuals, identified peer advocates who have joined Bloom 365 in our effort. Oh, you're mute. You're muted, Donna.
Oops. Okay, let me make sure that the sound is good here. Sound good?
To be a man is to feel tough, no emotion.
Act strong.
Hyper-masculine, kind of buff, rough and tough looking guy.
Being a person who is in touch with
Just a moment. I just noticed that the video was showing up a bit strange.
So was everybody having challenges with the video, or is that just on Chance's end? If you could in the chat, and then I can see if I can try something different.
Yeah, I also saw something weird on the screen. There was a gray box.
A gray box, okay. Let's try that again.
To be a man is to feel tough, no emotion.
Act strong.
Hyper-masculine, kind of buff, rough and tough looking guy.
being a person who is in touch with his emotions.
I'm going to try this one other way. I don't see a gray box on my end. Hold on one second. I'm going to go over to our YouTube channel where we also have this populated and see if that would be better. Sorry about that. Who's there? Okay. It's telling me that my screen share is paused. Tyler, can you check on your end to see if something's going on with my screen share capability?
No, you should just be able to, let me see.
It says screen share is paused. I don't know why. All right, let me try that one more time. Sorry, y'all. We're almost there. The good thing is we're running ahead of schedule. So Says your screen share is paused.
It says it's, I mean, I can see it right now, so it's
Okay,
just
let's
weird that
try
it,
see if this works. Okay.
so if you don't full screen the video, we can see everything. So if you could just leave it like that.
Can you see it now?
Yes.
Okay.
So we can't see the video that you're playing.
You can.
I can see the YouTube page.
Let me do this way. Let's see if we go here. One more, if not, I will give you all the link to watch the video. Let's see. How about that?
It's definitely better. The random bars aren't in the way as much, but it's still kind of there, but it's better.
All of my bars, sorry.
To be a man is to feel tough, no emotion.
Act strong.
Hypermasculine, kind of buff, rough and tough looking guy.
Being a person who is in touch with his emotions.
So I think the phrase be a man is inherently loaded by society, but if I was to say my personal definition of being a man, it's being who I am, and because of my gender, it's inherently what masculinity is. So being kind, being empathetic, understanding, good listener, good partner.
I've heard man up, grow up, don't cry.
Wussy, man up, tough up.
Be a man, stand up for yourself. Or she's cute, go and do this. And it's like, okay.
You know, not be a crybaby, you know, or like, don't be a sissy, don't be a wussy.
I think like those traditional phrases you hear, things like man up or don't act like a girl, those are things that are associated with traditional masculinity that you hear.
Feels like I can't do what I want to do with my life, and that I have to go along this certain path that I don't necessarily want to go along, and I can't really live my life.
You know, it's kind of wrong a little bit, because, you know, just because you're a guy, you can show emotion, you know.
They make me feel shattered to realize what, I mean, it's the 21st century. Like, we shouldn't really be hung up on the things that were happening in the 1960s.
Sometimes it like makes me like kind of like my facial like when I'm talking about them like first like one-on-one, like it doesn't really come to me, but afterwards, like when I go home or something, like talk to myself, it's like, yeah, that kind of hurt me, you know, deep.
I've learned to try to address them properly, take them as an educating opportunity for whoever is making those comments. Try to have a conversation regarding the true meaning of those words, of those phrases, and where they're coming from, and what are their expectations when someone makes those comments.
Be overly controlling, overly obsessed, overly jealous.
Like property, I guess, or like an object, basically, you know, like no emotions for that thing, you know, like just doesn't care.
Abuse them or something?
Probably treat a woman with, like an object. Probably treat a woman with, obviously, pure disrespect. No consideration of who the girl really is, but rather of what she is, a girl.
women should be almost subservient, and if I'm a good man, I should be protective of that person instead of like realizing their autonomy and seeing them as human beings and full people.
I'm the provider, I'm the worker, I bring in the money, you stay home, you take care of the kids, you be in the kitchen, you have the house clean.
Something that could at least help people.
I would be free-spirited and be able to travel a whole lot and live my life how I want to.
A pacifist, so like going around spreading love, not caring about that toxic masculinity, but just kind of overlooking that and then focusing on the people who really do need that love and affection.
More of a respecting kind of guy who, like, you know, who loves whoever he wants to, or like respects himself and also others in a way.
Yes. Yeah.
I think they should change. I think they should change.
I do think it needs to change.
Yeah, they do need to change.
Yes.
It does.
For sure.
Yeah.
Because I feel like labeling all men under one specific thing for everything is not the way we should go.
Because if men want to show emotions, other people will judge them. Because people think that men are supposed to be tough. Because nowadays people are changing. It's not really like the stereotypical, oh, strong, tough man, stuff like that.
Because not a whole lot of men actually look that way. There's a very small percent that actually does. And that small percent will only look that way for a small period of time anyway.
Because if we still have that idea and that norm about men being toxic and hyper-masculine, then what happens to the non-toxic and the caring and empathetic men and masculine identified people? Like, what happens then?
I'm inspired every day by the young men I work with, seeing them recognize what toxic masculinity even is, and trying to break down those walls themselves. I think this change is going to be led by them. It's not led by me. It's led by young people who are reclaiming this word for themselves.
So in that video, we get to see, you know, it's really okay to show up as your full self, you know, to be who you are. I know this firsthand. I can even, you know, provide an example, considering I am a male that works with Bloom 365. You know, I'm a combat veteran. I'm a dad, and I put those emotions to the side for a long time. You know, closed off, didn't allow people to see who I was. And that caused a lot of pain in my life. That caused a lot of pain in relationships as well. I lost a lot of relationships because I did that, because I wouldn't, you know, have those conversations, release those emotions, be vulnerable. And I found that once I was able to talk about it, let it out, be emotional, be vulnerable, I found that I was stronger for it, not weaker. And to do this, you know, we really have to have that open and honest conversation. We just uncovered those links between the social norming of masculinity and violence, and how society still places a higher financial, physical, and social value of power on those masculine over feminine traits, right? So norms that support gender inequities, hypermasculinity, adherence to those rigid gender roles, and a general acceptance of violence perpetuate sexual violence, while inflaming that fear, hatred, discomfort, or mistrust of those LGBTQ plus individuals. So gender-based violence is really born from this privilege.
Yes, thank you, Chance, and thank you for sharing a little bit of your lived experience with all of us. We appreciate that. So before we wrap up, adults, thank you for those of you who are still with us. Think about what is one thing, just one thing, that you can do as a trusted adult in the lives of young people and in the lives of teens to prevent one or more of the root causes? If you want to share in the chat, feel free. If not, just reflect and think about this individually. Harshita, what do you think there's one thing that adults can do to help you and Gen Z and your peers root out some of these common causes?
I just think the most important thing in that regard is just listening to the Gen Z, the kids around you, and making sure you really hear them rather than kind of I know a lot of adults do this. They tend to dismiss, especially teenagers' voices because we're just growing up. We're not old enough. One thing that would really help would be listening to the young voices around you and really taking those into consideration.
Awesome. Thank you. So our next webinar, webinar 3, which is going to be Thursday, this Thursday, same time, we're going to focus on who is at risk for teen dating violence and start to uncover those risk factors, some of those adverse childhood experiences, and some of the things that researchers call social determinants of health that affect the choices, the actions, and the behaviors of young people. This is going to be an important webinar for any of you who have teens in your life who you might be concerned that they might be on the path to becoming abusive, controlling, or violent. And just for anyone who works with young people so that you understand what they're up against and how we can work together to reduce the risk and prevent these root causes. Again, this is the overview of what we're going to review, and we're also going to continue to bring in as many team perspectives as possible. As a reminder, Bloom 365 provides a full complement of support and services for young people who are going through it, whether it is experiencing or witnessing abuse or violence, teen dating abuse, domestic violence, or sexual violence, or using violence themselves. We have our toll-free and confidential anonymous helpline, 1-888-606-4673, which spells HOPE. We also have complimentary and services that complement our helpline and digital services, including licensed counseling, generalized and just basic advocacy services, just someone to listen, someone to provide support, someone to validate experiences of young people. And we also, thanks to Chance's work with us, now have specific interventions for young people who are using violence. So you can access all of our resources and support by texting or calling that number. We also have, which I put in the chat here, the link to a resource folder. In this folder, you will find our checklists, our resources, a trusted adult ally toolkit with a lot of the information that we're going to be sharing with you throughout these webinars. Also, upcoming events. We have some great events coming up, so you'll see them and find them in that resource folder. So please do click that link, bookmark it. We update it regularly, and hopefully if there is information that you're looking for, you will find it there. We so appreciate you spending this time with us. We will stick around for any additional thoughts or questions that you may have. But again, we all know that we can do just one thing to help root out teen dating violence and be that support to young people in their lives. Hopefully we will see you on Thursday for webinar number 3.